Okay, well, it's time to turn our attention to the international newspapers. Diptyka Laurent is with us for that. Diptyka, let's start in Israel, perhaps. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has until midnight local time to find coalition partners and form a government, or else.
Exactly. You might be forgiven for looking at the Jerusalem Post's front page today and thinking that it's an old headline or an old front page, but no, this is today's front page. Benjamin Netanyahu is facing the prospect of fresh elections unless he's able to cobble together, because really right now that's kind of what he would be doing, cobbling together a coalition by midnight. So far, there's no real prospect in sight because his former defense minister, Avigdor Lieberman, is kind of holding things up over a key demand that could actually allow a government to be formed. For the center-left paper Haaretz, it's an occasion to perhaps fantasize about an Israel in which Benjamin Netanyahu was not prime minister. I quote, his April 9 election added hubris to his cardinal sins of self-absorption, self-victimization, and self-aggrandizement. Without Netanyahu, Israel might be, for instance, able to disengage from the embrace of authoritarian nationals. The Likud party, the ruling party, could return to its former glory as a vibrant political party, and Israel might be able to change its, quote, unhealthily symbiotic relationship with Donald Trump.
Okay, pretty harsh take there from Haaretz. But moving from Israel's political crisis to one in Belgium, the king there is meeting with political parties to try and form a federal government.
Yeah, that's right. Post-elections in Belgium are always very complicated because the country is so fractured linguistically and regionally. You have the Flemish in the north, the French speakers in the south. King Philippe, who's appointed with the task of choosing someone to form the next government, has been meeting with the various parties. He continues those consultations this Monday. That could also include the far-right leader, Vlaams Belang, for the first time, who would be meeting him in the palace for the first time, because indeed Vlaams Belang, the far-right, made significant gains and victories in the north, in the Flemish region. Politico explains that the king's choices are really limited. Either he tips the balance towards the north and designates a Flemish separatist party, the N-VA party, whose head, Bart de Wever, is the mayor of Antwerp. But that's unpalatable because the separatists actually want the end of the monarchy, so that would be kind of counterintuitive. The other alternatives are the socialists in the south, but doing that would disregard those results, those strong results for the far right in the north. So where does he go? It's really difficult. It's why Politico calls it the Belgian king's far right migraine.
Indeed, we have seen Belgium go for long periods of time before without a government, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that. Meanwhile, Diptyka, let's talk a bit about abortion. The US state of Missouri could actually become the first there without an abortion clinic.
That's right. There's only one Planned Parenthood clinic in St. Louis in Missouri, and state authorities are threatening not to renew the clinic's license, which expires this Friday. If that happens, Missouri could become the first U.S. state with no abortion clinic for the first time since 1974. That's what the Washington Post explains. The New York Times calling it a dark milestone for women's rights. It deplores the fact that ending abortion care in St. Louis would mean that the iconic Supreme Court ruling, the Roe versus Wade ruling that legalized abortion, would basically make it a ruling in name only, because women in Missouri wouldn't actually be able to access abortion clinics. Indeed, that ruling, that Supreme Court ruling, is preventing all these state rulings from actually going into effect. The Times saying that if the clinic does shut down, it will show America, quote, what abortion access would look like in much of the country if that Supreme Court ruling was overturned, as many of the conservative politicians in the U.S. want.
And speaking of abortion, of course, we're seeing more protests in Argentina, re-proposing a bill wanting to legalize it there.
Yeah, that's right. Abortion in Argentina is currently illegal and entails a jail term for both the mother and doctor if performed. The legalization of that abortion bill failed in the Senate last year, but it was presented once again on Tuesday, more of a symbolic gesture to make it an electoral issue ahead of national elections later this year. The Huffington Post looking at abortion rights across the world. In countries like Mozambique, Uruguay, and Ireland, it is legal. In Poland, attempts to outlaw abortion has failed, but the access to abortion is severely restricted. Brazil, too, now with Jair Bolsonaro, the far-right president, looking at restricting access even further there.
Meanwhile, on Tuesday, it was actually World Menstrual Hygiene Day, a chance to shed light on access to menstrual products.
Yeah, and if you're tuning out as soon as I say the word menstrual, that is also part of the problem, Eve. That's according to this article from The Guardian. According to this writer, there are 5 times as many studies into erectile dysfunction as PMS, premenstrual stress, despite the fact that 90% of women experience it every single month. Well, one California startup thinks it has the answer. Weed tampons. They're not actually tampons, but they are CBD-infused suppositories that apparently can alleviate your monthly pain, which can be chronic and debilitating. I don't know if it works, but it's surely a good idea.
At least they're coming up with ideas. That's already something. Diptyka Laurent, thanks a lot for that wrap-up of the international papers.